Good morning, everybody. It's a Saturday morning after tax season, and I think I have officially crashed. The last 4 days have been not good brain days. But anyway, we're back and moving again. We're going to do the first couple of blocks in the first half of row 10. So there's one block in there. And which one was that, Mom? Block E, I believe. That has is
Block,
this we're gonna wait until and do another one on its own. Is that it right there?
That's
Let me have it. We have it. Okay, this is block E, and I'm just going to show you what we're going to do with this one here is a little more involved. And this is one that we're going to do a special video on just on that one block, but it is in the first half of row 10. So with that being said, we're going to move on to a couple of other blocks that Mom wants to highlight for you. And we'll put this one on and just know that this one's coming in its own video. Okay. Now, let's see. Block C and D, I believe, are the ones that she wants to highlight today. We're going to go over block C has got the double-headed arrows on it. So we're going to go over the double-headed arrows and how that process works. I know we've done it in the past, but we're trying to revisit these things every several months when a block comes up. And that way, at least you get that revisited, and maybe we say something a different way that maybe it makes sense to you this time that it didn't the last time, or it's just a revisiting things and just kind of a reiterating, and hopefully it'll make a little more sense the more you go over it. So I think at this point, I'm going to switch places with Mom. We're going to spotlight the tablet, and I'm going to let her start on the blocks that she's going to go over. Okay.
Okay, now into place. This block has the double-headed arrows here, in these two places, in these two places, and here.
Okay, you can see on the foundation where those double-headed arrows are. You've got a set of directions in that came in with row 1 that's called double-headed arrow directions, or technique, or something along that line. And I think it's a 2-page thing. So that's what we're going to kind of go over and show you how those work. And the idea behind those is to get your bias edges in here and still retain the straight of grain out here on your pieces, but yet not have to worry about how to cut these pieces using a template or this weird gyrations of some sort. So that's the reason behind the double-headed arrows.
Yeah, and another reason behind it is that this angle right here is not a 45-degree angle. So we can't cut a square on the diagonal and expect to have a great deal of success with this. So that's why we go with the double-headed arrows. Now I'm going to push this off to the side, and I'm going to take off, and I'm only going to do one because they're all alike.
Okay, you're going to do one of there's
this one.
Pieces around the edge of here. These are shorter because they only go this place. These would just have longer pieces on this side, but all these 4 units are made the same way.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, to start off with, let's get this grid off of here.
Okay, I got it.
That way it's easier to see. Now I've got this is turned over. I'm going to put a little bit of glue. Well, that looks like a whole lot, but it'll do the same. Now turn this over this way.
Your fabric is upside down.
Fabric is right side next to the glass, so it's wrong side up.
Now we're following the general directions at this point to place this.
And the glue has been applied to the piece B, and I have extra all around the edges. So it's down.
Now this is steps 1, 2, 3 of your general directions. This is something that we use absolutely everything we do. So we're repeating the general directions as well. But you can see how we tell you to hover over it and make sure that it's outside your sewing lines. At least you've got a 1/4 of an inch outside the lines. How easy it is to see that and place those pieces without having to do it from this side, tearing it off, placing it, and it being wrong. It's just much easier to hover over it like that.
Okay, now we put piece 1 down with the glue. Piece 2 is next. So we're going to put this is my guide for the add a quarter. I'm going to fold that over, lay the add a quarter down, and I'm not going to cut on this glass.
Oh, no, we better not do that. Okay, let's put this back up here. Good catch.
Okay, yeah. And I have removed that little piece. All right, so we've still got this crazy angle, and I just got through telling you that it was not a 45. So what are we going to do? Got the angle cut. Now the next step is to take and put a little bit of glue on this piece. That's where piece 2 is going to go. And I can see here that I need to line this up a little past. I can see the line there, and I want it to be fairly lined up with the edge of this piece. Okay.
So you're kind of looking at your straighter grain is going to be kind of straight through here.
And out here, which is, well, out here, which is important. That's the outside of the block. Then smash that down. Okay, now get this angle. You already creased this, because there's the crease you made. Take and hold this. I'm going to fold it over.
On the crease.
On the crease.
Just let the crease itself again.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me turn this off.
Okay, and then I'm going to come back in with my add a quarter, and I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to slide it off, and you can feel when it's off that little lip that's there.
So you're using the
fold.
The fold of the foundation that's underneath you can't see. You're putting this on and then just sliding it till it kind of falls off the lip.
I'll do that again.
Okay.
I put it on here.
And you feel it. You don't see it.
You can feel it. Okay, and when I try to go push it backwards, it's going to push the whole thing.
Okay.
So if you can do that. Okay, back on the board again.
Okay.
If I had a plain non-gridded one or a non-block one, then we're going to cut off what sticks out of this one that we just glued on. So we get rid of that little piece. All right, now there they are. So you take this piece off here. It goes
you put this way on simply to get the cut edge first. Then you pull it off.
And then you put it down here. And I'm going to place it so that this corner right here is in the seam allowance.
By very much or not?
About halfway.
Okay.
Not more than halfway. You don't want the point clear out here. You want the point about halfway or a little closer to that side. Now then, I'm ready to sew.
Okay. Another way to line it up this direction would be to put a pin in the seam line where you're going to sew.
I'm going to put a pin in this way and a pin here, and I'm doing it on this. Okay, now then I can see, and it has to go this way. So that gives me a visual guide. My seam end of the seam is there. The end of the seam is there where the other pin is. And if I want to shift that down a flicker, I can do it. So I know that I still have room. I've got to have plenty out here and plenty out here, so I won't be encroaching on that seam line.
So we're using the pins to give you a visual guide of where the end of your seam line is, and then you make sure that you've got another at least a quarter of an inch on the outside of those for seam allowance.
Right. So now I'm going to take the pins out because I don't need them anymore. And I'm going to flip this over.
And if your hands don't work quite well as far as keeping those pieces in exactly the right place, then pin it down and take it to your machine with pins in it.
Yes, by all means.
I think the foot pedal.
Yeah, my foot pedal's not where I really.
Not where you need it.
Okay, and I backed up. Now I'm going to sew forward. And back up.
You know, this is a neat little machine, but I sure like my thread clipper things on my other one.
Yeah, I know. But sometimes the thread clippers don't work that well and they cut the thread too short, and I'm kind of picky about that, but
Yeah.
anyway. Okay, seam is sewed.
All right, let's put it over here so we can kind of see.
And it's fits. It's
And the angle is right.
The angle is right.
And you've got your straight of grain is all around the outer edge and the piece is right.
Now I'm going to go over here and press this.
Okay. Now the glue that's on that piece will also help hold it in place.
Keep it in place.
Keep it in place a little bit.
Because when you iron that with the iron, when you press that piece with the iron, it reactivates that glue.
And it kind of makes it good and sticky again.
So there it is. There's that one.
Okay, so that's a double-headed arrow. Now,
yeah. Now on the other side, we've got the other side to go. We might just as well do it while we're here. Piece number 3, that's in place. We're going to trim the other side of this little piece of fabric. There it is. Okay.
Now
back to the glue out here. And this piece goes on. And here again, you can see I'm watching my little arrow here. They're the outside edge.
Let me pull the cutting mat just a little bit so you're on the plain glass. Might be easier to see.
Okay, there's the line, and I'm pretty well lined up the way I want to be. So I'm going to smash that down. Now turn it over and refold. And here again, yeah, we got to have this again. I've got to buy myself one of those plain ones.
Well, we're going to Paducah next week, so I have a feeling I know where we're going to end up and what we're going to come home with.
Yes, you probably do. All right, now let's do this trick once again with the pins. Seam line there. And seam line there. Now, pretty obvious. It's going to go not this way, but this way.
Lay it down the way it's going to finish, and then flip it over so that your seam lines match.
And then it's going to look like this when you match up your seam lines.
And we're using the pins again to give ourselves a guide so that we know where the...
And I'm going to pin this one in place because they tend to shift. Mine do.
At this point?
Yeah. And I'm going to pull this pin out from the back and put it in here. Get rid of that one. Now I'm going to go sew.
Okay.
And here again, I'm going to set that needle down a little ways from the corner.
On the inside of the line, down the line just a little bit.
Down the line, just a little bit.
And you're going to back stitch out to the corner and then over it again. It just puts only 2 layers of stitches into that seam line rather than the normal 3. If you start at the outer edge of that seam line, go in, back stitch, and then sew the seam line. And in some of these really small pieces, that little extra couple of stitches, layers of thread, really makes a big difference.
And when you got a little machine like this, I don't know how many of you know it or not. When you get ready to take something out of your machine, you need to make sure that this take-up lever is on its downswing. It's come up. Let me do that again. Okay. It's coming up. Don't take your stuff out and cut the thread now. Bring that take-up lever up until it begins to come back down. That way you won't pull your thread out of the needle on the next swing of the take-up lever.
Okay, because a take-up lever, when it's going up, is putting tension on the thread, pulling it more or less out of the needle.
When the thread's cut, when the take-up lever is on the uptake, it's going to pull the thread out of the needle if you cut your thread short enough.
Okay.
If it's on the downtake, it won't do anything.
There's no pressure on it.
There's no pressure. There's nothing to pull that thread up.
Okay.
And there's many people who have been cursing the machine. My mom was one of them, bless her heart. She just did not like that part of the machine, but I finally figured out what the problem was, and it seemed to take care of the whole thing.
Okay, so
So there we are.
okay,
Now this is ready for me to trim here.
trim all the way around the outside edge.
Actually, I only trimmed 3 sides. I trimmed this one and this one and this one. And after it's on the block and pressed in place, then I trim this one.
Yeah,
Because of the turn of cloth, you might lose a thread or two and it won't match up just exactly right.
so it's much better to trim only those seams that you need to trim at the time and then trim them as you go so that you don't cut off a turn of cloth that you wish you had later.
Right.
And normally it's not a big deal, but in small pieces like this, in small blocks like this, it can become an issue.
It can become a big issue.
Okay.
All
So
right. That's all I needed to show you on that one. The rest of it is just straightforward piecing according to the directions.
okay. Well, in that case, then let's put this block off to the side. And
we're going to pull this one in.
that's which block?
This is D.
Okay. Applique.
Yeah.
My least favorite thing to do. The fact is, I've never done it. So I really have no way to say this. I just think it's going to be hard. So I've already preconceived myself. I'm going to have to get out of that mindset.
Yeah, you are. We're gonna have to break you of that.
Gonna have to break me of that one.
Okay, on this block, you have one centerpiece that goes here,
Your dark colored.
the dark color in the middle, and then you have unit 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, see how that goes together? I'm going to turn it over here. And you really can't see much of that on the back side. So let's get down really close here. And you can see we've got seams right here. That's a seam line. And then you see a little short little feller out here at the corners of each one of these. Each one of these has a little corner. The other part of the seam is underneath of the applique. So you don't see much of it, but it is actually the center of this block under the applique is actually 5 different pieces of fabric. And that's what she wants to show you today is how to get those put together so that your seam lines end up right. You don't have puckers in all this, and your little applique pieces here fit within the square and don't encroach on anything else. Okay.
All right, got that. Okay, I glued my piece to the center. And then I took a little shortcut that I'm going to tell you about. On these pieces, each of these, this is going to be the straight edge of the fabric. So I cheated a little. I trimmed off the excess foundation on the dashed line. And then I glued my foundation to my fabric and lined up the edge of the foundation with the cut edge of the fabric. Saves a step in cutting.
Don't have to cut the fabric.
Have to
You
cut
just like
that.
so you might have a little more extra fabric on the
That's fine.
outer edge there, but you just it's just another way to accomplish the same thing.
And then I went in and I cut this angle and cut this angle. Well, I've got this angle yet to cut, so I'll do it now.
And you can cut this with a rotary cutter. There's nothing wrong with that.
I just happen to do it with shears because if that rotary cutter slips, I'm going to be in trouble. If that ruler slips, I'm going to be in trouble. Okay, now they're all trimmed. Seam 1 to seam 1. That's pretty obvious. And this is going to be the paint drying portion of the watching paint dry thing. So you clip that, pin that.
So we're pinning, we're checking the corners to make sure that the 2 pieces that you're putting together, the corners match. And if you're in the middle, any kind of a block, you want it to be as accurate as possible.
Okay, my pins are on the seam line.
Okay.
I'm going to go here and I'm going to start at the corner. Ordinarily, I would back up, but on this one, I'm going to start right on the corner. I don't want to go into the seam allowance. So forward and then reverse.
And why do you start at the corner on this one and not in the seam allowance?
Because I want it to be a little more secure. I feel that because I'm gonna bring another seam to that corner.
Okay, so we just want a little more security in that
Yeah.
one. Willing to take a little more bulk in the seam for the added security.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, now that's piece number 1 or units 1 and 2 joined together
on seam number
on
1.
seam number 1. Okay. Now, number 2 is down here, so we're going to go opposites. It's just a little easier to work if you do opposite sides. So here again, we match up the corners, pin it on the seam line.
Okay.
And corners
And while she sews,
on the
I'm going
seam
to
line.
mention that in this case, what we're also doing is we're sewing on the same seam line that the pins are in. So when she gets close to the end, all she has to do is put her finger on the end of that pin and hold it. And the pin will now come out of the foundation and the stuff. She doesn't have to pull on the pin.
I just hold it down, let the
Just-
machine pull the fabric off.
Right, let the machine pull the fabric off. So it's another way to continue sewing. Just a little shortcut, just a little trick. Okay, that would look like we
Okay.
got a bow tie.
I'm getting there. Now, I'm pressing the seams away from the center, and I've not pressed them with an iron yet. I'm just going to scratch them down with my fingernail.
It doesn't really matter. You can do it either way.
Right.
You just need to have some kind of a way to make sure that seam doesn't have buckles in it.
Right. Now, number 3 goes on,
Okay.
lining up the outer edge. And here again, that point with that line. There we are.
Okay.
We're good to go.
Okay.
All right, we're back to the machine again. And I'm starting at the corner.
And this thing, you don't want to go into this seam line because otherwise you're going to be pulling in or making a pucker in something that's already been sewn. You want to go corner to corner, but you want to be right at the corner.
All right, and that one's on. And we press it away from the center. And the last one to go on is number 4.
Again, the same way, corner to corner, and pin it. Make sure that your corners match. Pin the seam line down to make sure that it doesn't wiggle on you in between the corners.
Okay.
And then
the pin's not on the line right here, but it's also not on the line here. So it's still lined up okay.
Okay.
And it's on the line there. So I'll go back down the line here and pin this. We're on the line. And into the
corner.
Mm-hmm.
Sink the needle, then drop the presser foot, and then forward and then back stitch a little bit. Go to the end of the line, hold the pin, and when you get to the last corner of that seam line, back stitch a little bit.
All right. Now here again,
Looks like
the
we got
seam,
wings.
the seams get pressed away from the center. Now, the next thing is, last seam we sewed was number 4. So now we want number 5, and that's this one right here. So I'm going to take and fold this so that my sides of the square match up.
Okay. And your piece of the square just kind of sandwiched in between.
It's folded in there in between.
Okay.
So then I'm going to come out here. Okay, it's got to match here. And it does. Now then, we also have to we don't have to, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Where'd my little
Maybe-
straight edge go?
Did we do something with it? I covered it up, maybe?
Well, I don't know.
No?
I'm gonna eyeball it.
Okay.
Okay, I want to sew through the seam allowances out here. I'm gonna put a pencil mark there. Just not gonna make any difference. You're gonna tear it off anyway. So we want to sew through the seam allowance. Don't have the back stitch this time. Not at the beginning of this. Now when I get to that corner, I do back stitch, just stitch or two. And here again, I'm going to creep up on that corner, back stitch, and we're good to go.
So you're back stitching at, not at the very outer edge, but where the foundation starts. Because that's where the actual corner of the block, where it's
And
gonna
we
join
have the
everything
seam. So
else.
which way did we press that one?
This one?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's underneath.
Throw the light.
That
Let's
way.
see. It's going, okay. We're gonna press them counterclockwise.
Okay. If you couldn't tell, I pointed my finger. You know,
That's
the
all
one
right.
where you put your, somebody said, which way do I turn? And you put
There's
your finger
5
in
and
front of
there's 6. So again, we're gonna fold the center. And clip it. I want him to stay there. Then it's match up.
And just by the simple fact that you pulled those edges together and everything, the cut edges are matching, more than likely that inside corner is not going to have an issue at all.
It should be spot on. Okay, that's good. Now I'm gonna eyeball this one and hope I do a good job. If I can line up my line with the opening in the foot. Got it. All right. Got a back stitch there at the point. And we have another corner. And it's a clean corner.
All right, I'm gonna turn the light on here. See if that helps. If it helps to show.
It's a real, there's no puckers.
Okay.
No pucker there, no pucker there. Okay, now I'm going to keep on going. And this here again, this is going to get kind of boring, but the next step is what after this, when I get all these sides sewn, that's what I want to show you the next time.
Okay. So this is just kind of making those corners. You're making mitered corners.
Making mitered corners, or another term for it is Y seam.
But also, as you continue to sew here, let's take this tip that we're looking at now. And how can you use this whenever you put mitered corners on borders on a little quilt, or you put mitered corners on let's say you're bordering a block out and you really want a mitered corner. Think of how this method will help you possibly get those mitered corners and get them exact where you don't have puckers at the inside edge and the miter is actually a 45. So this is not just a tip for this, although this is where we're using it. This could be used anywhere that you want a mitered corner.
Okay, now it's done. The last one, and then we'll be on to something else right quick. Here again, I'm folding them down and clip it because it'll wiggle on you. If you're doing the corner, if you're doing like the mitered border on a quilt, you can probably end up pinning it and be okay. And there's not much of a place for it to go wrong out here, so I'm going to line it up. And if you don't make a stitch right on the corner, life on this earth isn't going to end as we know it if you don't. It just is. There's one room there for that fabric to go, and that's fine. All right. Now,
You want to press that and make it?
I'm going to press it. But the first thing I'm going to do, no, I'm going to press it. I'll make up my mind.
She's
in a
always
minute or
looking
two.
for a new, better way to do something. And not that the old way doesn't work, but sometimes whenever you're doing this, and we come up with new ideas in the middle of these videos, and we have to stop ourselves and not do too much thinking and realize that we got to talk about it later and then come back with something as an additional tip that we just learned. But a lot of it comes from what we're doing here.
I'm going to take the foundation out of the seam allowances on that center piece.
Just the center?
And I'm going to take it out. Well, it'll turn better if I take it out, you know.
All the way around.
Yeah. And it'll press out better.
Okay.
Okay. Now, take it out of there. It's done its job. Take it out. Always seems like it takes forever to do this job when you're waiting on time to pass, but it's one of those things. Okay, one more to go, I think.
And 1/4 of an inch is not a very big piece to grab a hold of.
No, it's not. But this stuff comes out pretty easy.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're out of all the seam allowances. And I'm going to press these seams one way.
You're going to go ahead and press them again with the seam with the foundation out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now then, I'm also going to press the seams that are in the center. I'm going to press them away from the center. Okay.
Okay.
And that's basically ready to go. Now, the next thing is we bring in the master, which has all this other pretty stitching on it. And this is going to go on here. So, give me a little more light.
Okay. Fair enough.
Uh-huh. Now, you're going to notice there are gray, you can hardly see them. There's a gray line here and a gray line here, out here on every corner.
Let me get a little closer so if we can see that gray line you're talking about.
Okay, the gray line is here.
Okay.
Here, out here, here, and here. That means you match them up with what's on here. Okay, now another thing is you want the writing to be right side up. If you could read this as backwards, it's right side up. This is right side up. It's okay. So bring the master over onto what we just made and line up. There's the dotted line. Line that up.
So the gray lines you're lining up with the seam lines of the piece that you just sewed.
Right.
Okay.
Now I'm going to pin that there. It's flathead pin. Now this seam line, the gray line is there. It's matched up there. Now when I put the pins in, I'm keeping them away from these stitching lines. This line is lined up there.
You're basically going around and making sure that each one is lined up the way it ought to be.
Yeah, because this seam line has to come to this corner.
Okay, so you're underneath. pushing it. So
Right
this
there.
point right there,
Mm-hmm.
that seam line has to be at that corner.
Right.
Okay. So this is the lining up part that's going to be real particular.
Yeah, and this one is the same way. That point should be right at the corner, and it is on this side. And you can stick your pin in there or whatever it is and shift it around a little bit. Okay. All right, I got all four of them lined up. Now the next thing is to put these two pieces on, and it says I've got 1A. So I've got to get ready to put that on. Which means
You go back to the general directions
mhm,
and you're going to fold the foundation back on that stitching line.
right, this is the next piece to go on. So I'm going to put my line here. No, hold on a minute here. I can't read the writing on the foundation, so I put it on
You put it on
the
backwards.
wrong side,
Okay.
which means I have to go back and do this over again.
Okay.
That's okay. You probably will have to also. Point being, you want to be able to read everything. There, that's easier.
Okay. And now you line up the corners.
Line up the corners again. Again. Getting good at this. Now I just put my finger under there and lined it up. You want to keep those pins away from your cutting line, because you go across this thing with a rotary cutter, you're not going to think very kind thoughts if you nick your ruler or your cutter. Okay. Gonna have to do a little movement. Okay.
Now you've also got to remember that the foundation does not stretch or move, doesn't shrink, and your fabric does. So if you've got a little bit of a bubble here or there, the pressing is going to take a lot of this out. Your fabric is going to kind of conform to where you want to put it. If it's just a little bit, things are going to happen like that when you deal with a non-stretchable item, putting it against something that does have stretch. So it's just something that it may not match perfect, but this is where you use some little poetic license and
Yeah. Yeah, you're in control here. Remember, this is an inanimate object. We want to make it do what we want it to do.
That's right.
Okay, so ready for this. Add a quarter ruler. That. Now, I want to put
One of the smaller pieces.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
This piece
Now,
goes on here.
As she's doing this, you also realize that when she trimmed that, there was some fabric and foundation in what she was trimming. There's the fabric, and there's the foundation part of it on that piece. So the piece that she's now, the center part that she's sewing down to the base unit, has still got foundation under it. So we're looking at a double layer of foundation at this point. But you still want to sew this seam now. We'll show you what you do with that. So if you got questions on that one, we got an answer coming up. So she gets that seam sewed, we'll show you what you have to do. So in this case, she puts her needle down, back stitches a little bit, and sews to the other side and back stitches there. Don't over sew, just go line to line.
Okay, now that one is sewn. Trim it up and try to be neat. I can take those pins out and that pin out, and I can take that pin out and that pin out. I'm also going to take that one out and that one out. Now, I'm going to go over here and press this seam. All right, it's where it's supposed to be. Now, we don't want 2 layers of foundation in here. That's a little too much. We need it stabilized, but that's a little much. So I'm going to go in here and fold this down, and I'm going to tear out, if I can get my fingers in there, this foundation. Now I'm not tearing this one. I'm tearing the seam allowance of what I put on.
Seam allowance
Piece.
of the piece that she made to begin with.
And you might have to get in there and work to get that little piece out. That's okay. Now the next thing is you go in here and take all of this out.
That's why we sew only the one seam, because you've got to be able to flip this open and get the foundation out from underneath. And lining up all 4 corners is necessary to make sure that it all lines up when you sew that one seam. Now you're going to line up all those corners again, but you had to do it to begin with to make sure that they came out right.
Okay, make sure I've got foundation out of here pretty much. Okay, now this thing is just flopping in the breeze.
What about your one in the middle?
Oh yeah, we want
You
to get
want
rid of
that
that
one
too. Yeah, we need it gone too.
Okay.
Okay, now that we got a mess all over the place. Okay, turn the light back on.
Okay.
And we're back to realigning. We know we got this one already stabilized.
So we really only have to do the 2 seams that you did not sew. To sew across them.
Yeah, I got to do here and here.
Okay.
So I'm gonna line, and here again, it's not wanting it with there's no fabric, there's no foundation holding this now. So yeah, you're gonna be able to manipulate that. Okay.
All right.
And this one's already committed, and so is this one because it's sewn in. Now the next thing to do is,
again, go back to the general directions, and you're going to put the next piece on, which means you cut the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And in this one, since we've got all the foundation out, all she's cutting is fabric.
I think that's the shorter one.
Yep, I think you're right.
Okay, so we're gonna line it up. Stick a pin in it. Away from the seam line, or where you're going to sew, because it's a pain in the neck to stop and take out pins. Now you already left these pins far enough away from the seam line so they're not going to get caught or not going to get hit with a needle. That's a good way to shatter a needle too, let me tell you.
I've broken a needle before, and it went down in the machine base of it, and I had to go down in there with a magnet thing to try to get it out because I couldn't even find it, and I knew it was there, and I was refusing to start sewing again because I couldn't find it. It had to be there, and I did find it. It took me a while, but I did find it.
Okay. Now all the pins can come out.
All your corners are now held in place.
So we've taken care of that one. Now I'll go over here and give this one a press.
Using the either a water pen or fabric folding pen or something.
Starch, something.
Little starch of some
Something to
sort.
moisten it just a little bit.
Make it easier to get a good crease on it.
And this thing does not want to lay really flat.
It will when you get done with it. That's just what happens when fabric has a mind of its own.
Yeah.
Especially on a day when you're filming.
I'm still not liking that, but anyway. Okay, the next thing is to do this.
So you do the other 2 pieces. There's 2 more pieces to go onto this block to finish piecing the foundation part of it, the base part of the block. Then we're on to the appliques.
And the applique, I don't think I'm going to get into today. We've been over that a whole bunch of times.
And actually, this is just piecing the rest of the block. just using the general directions, and continue on piecing it as you would any other block. As she finishes sewing on that one, I'm going to move over here to this one. And on your foundation, you've got 4 appliques that are of your background fabric, and then you've got these 12 that are of the colored fabric. When you got the 4 here in the middle, you're going to put those on first. And she hand appliqued these. So there's a little more puckering just because of the hand applique. But you want these to where they meet in the middle and they do not overlap at the outer edge. This is the big thing of these. So you'll put these 4 on together. Fix the appliques, place them, put a little bit of glue on the underneath side of this, and place them in place. And then sew them down. Then when you get ready to do the outer ones, these are going to be simple. They're going to start at this point and they're going to end up with this point on the seam line that we've created. But these 4 are the last ones you put on. You're going to put these 2 on together. Put one at the corner, put one out here, and then adjust the angle of these to make sure that the corners come together the way you want them. So put them on in pairs. And they all need to come down here to this point. When these pairs are put on, then slide this in to this open spot and make sure this point is on the seam line out here. That way you can place them.
Now we'll also have the stitching lines on here. Now, because we're doing it that way, because it's kind of, you don't have to sew on the green lines and on the red lines.
And we put those on there for you if you want to do it, but there are alternative ways on some blocks to put the appliques down. Not all of them have this option. So if you want to do that, you don't want to do the stitching on the placement lines, you don't have to on some blocks. This is one of those that you do have an option to do a little differently. But you do need them to line up and to not encroach on each other. And these outer points here need to match. And then these 3 need to come together right here in the middle, not overlapping each other. And she's got one more seam to go to. Okay, last seam sewed on.
Okay, now it's time to press.
Okay.
Now, this block basically is ready for the applique.
And it's really a very plain block by itself, but look at how the appliques changed the look. It looks completely different.
When you get ready to put these appliques on, the red ones go in the middle. And if you want, I'm not going to stitch on these lines. I've made this block so many times, it goes where it goes. When you get ready to do this in the center, cut these out, each one of them, because you got one for each piece of fabric, and put them on this side, line them up in the middle. Make sure that these points don't go past or into the background.
So you're going to audition your pattern pieces, yeah, before you ever put fabric around them.
I'll cut one out, I think.
If the pattern piece that you have, once you get it cut out, when you lay these on here, if they encroach, then trim the pattern piece down before you put fabric around it and create the applique. This is just a way to make sure that when you get your appliques ready to apply, they're the right size and you don't have to take them apart and redo them. You audition these guys first. And then you can trim the applique pieces down, or the pattern pieces down if you need to account for the turn of cloth.
Yeah, and that turner cloth will make the applique just a little bigger than the pattern piece is. So now I've got two, and I know that I'm gonna have turn of cloth, so I'm gonna position that just a little ways away from the sewn seam there. And do likewise with this one. And it looks like they're all going to fit. So I left the red line
Okay. As you can
It-
see, the red line is still on
still
this.
on that.
So
And
the
then
next,
the other two will go this way, but they all have to meet in the middle. And I don't sew anything down until I've got these four exactly where I want them. Then I go and I sew those down. Then I'll prepare the other ones, the
other
green
ones.
line ones, and then I will place them. And on the back of the block, it shows you where to place them. So if I were putting, this is a 1A, there's 1A. So this one, of course, it's over the reverse. It'll go in this corner.
Okay. And we do this simply because there were, on Jane's quilt, not all of her appliques were exactly the same size.
Right.
They were not cut using a pattern of any sort. She used whatever fabric she had. So therefore, it can make a difference in where they go.
Right.
And the look, and to make sure that they're placed. So that's the reason that they're all labeled differently. You may not see a difference in them, but there's enough of a difference that if you put them just wherever, you will not have a finished product that you're going to like, because the appliques are not going to work.
And there are some patterns, some designs in this quilt where you got what we call a cat's eye shape. Well, one side has a sharper curve than the other, and that's where you need to really be picky about putting them in the right place. So otherwise,
Okay.
it won't turn out right.
Okay. All right, I moved the spotlight away from the tablet. Is there anything that we need to address anymore? We're pretty well at our time limit right now.
I think we pretty well covered it. If anybody has questions, email us or go on the website on the Facebook page and ask about it.
Ask about it.
We'll be happy to answer your questions.
And understand that I do not monitor the Facebook page. I've got too many things to do. It's just not my thing. I'm good at time and motion efficiency. I am not good at Facebook.
That's okay.
And
I'll take care of that.
you can take care of Facebook, and Jenny takes care of Facebook. So if something happens there, somebody has to tell me about it. And then I will handle things. But other than that, I'm not on Facebook, and I don't really want to be. So at this point, just understand that there are things that we do the best we can to get back with you as soon as we can when we figure out what that you've contacted us. And there are so many ways to contact us. It's not even, it's unreal.
Yeah, you can do email to the Farmland Quilting,
do
or
it through the website, or do an email direct to us.
Or you can, let's see, you can direct message me if you really want to, but I mean,
it's better if you can go through email or the Facebook page, and just know that I don't monitor Facebook, and I will respond when I need to, but only when somebody else tells me I have to. And it's nothing against anybody else. It's just me. But anyway, if there's any other things that anybody wants to see, let us know. And I think we're going to call it quits for the day.
Sounds
so
like
we'll talk with you all later.
Good deal.
Bye.
Bye.